हरि ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। ओम वक्रतुंड महाकाय सूर्यकोटि समप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुर्साक्षात् परब्रह्मा तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Namaste friends. Team Param Vedanta warmly welcomes you to session 18 of Kathopanishad. The Kathopanishad is a relatively short Upanishad with only 2 chapters called Adhyayas. Each chapter has 3 sections called Vallis. Today we begin the second Valli of the second chapter. Lord Yama explains the nature of the Atma from both the micro and the macro angles. The individual is called the Jivatma, while the totality is called the Paramatma. In fact, there is only one Atma, and there is no adjective. We study the first 5 mantras of this Valli today. Dr. Hegde sir will moderate the session, helping us understand and absorb these profound verses about our true nature. Before we proceed, let us listen to Dr. Sheila, who will summarize the mantras we studied last week. Over to you, Dr. Sheila, ma'am.
Thank you, Panaga. Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. We completed Prathama Valli of second chapter in the last session. Now, let's recap the last 5 verses from 11th to 15th verses. Now, the first, that is 11th verse, is, we'll see the meaning of it, we'll see in the next slide. It is one of the important mantra on Sarvatma Bhava, which means there is only one substance in everything, that is Atma, the consciousness. Neha nanasti kinchana, which means there is no division at all, that is no plurality even in the present, which is conveyed by the verb asti in this mantra. Advaitam exists eternally. How to know Advaitam? It is only by understanding and removing the misconception of plurality. The standard example given is, just as a wave changed from mortality to immortality, not by transformation in the form of the wave, but by knowing it is a water. If Jnanam is the only method of knowing or going from Advaitam to Advaitam, mortality to immortality, then how to get this knowledge? That is Jnanam. Mantra says, Manaseva idam aptavyam. Through the mind alone, Jnanam has to be attained. It should be a qualified, a prepared mind for Atma Jnanam. Vedanta Shravanam, Guru Upadesham is the instrument, and mind is a locus of every knowledge, including Atma Jnanam. And this was explained in depth by our sir in the last session as idam vritti, aham vritti, vritti vyapti, and phala vyapti. This knowledge is compulsory knowledge, not an optional one. If one wants peace, security, fulfillment, that is purnatvam or moksha, and had to change the perspective to abedam from bedam. Otherwise, one who sees here plurality or the bedam as it is goes from death to death. Now, the next 2 verses in the next slide, that is 12th and 13th, Yamaraja emphasizes on Jivatma and Paramatma Aikyam, the essential identity of individual self, Veshti, that is microcosm, and universal self, Samashti, is revealed here. In this 12th mantra, Purusha Madhye Atmani Tishtati, The Jivatma, to be understood as consciousness principle, that is Sakshi, is located in the center of the individual body, that is the heart, and which is of the size of a thumb, that is Angusht Matraha, and is nothing but all pervading Paramatma, that is Ishana Bhuta Bhavyasya, Shrishti Sthiti Laya Karta of entire creation belonging to past, present, and future. So the limited consciousness which is in the heart and the limitless consciousness outside is only one consciousness. Again, the standard example is the space within the pot and the space outside are the same. As this is as it reveals Jivatma and Paramatma Aikyam, it is Mahavakya Mantra. And the benefit one gets from this is na vijugupsate. One does not seek security, that is, he is never insecure. The next slide, that is a 13th mantra, is again a Mahavakya mantra. We'll see the meaning in the next slide. Purusha Angusht Matraha, Jivatma, located and seated in Hrudayam, is experienced as finite and limited one. But what is the nature of it? It is Jyotir Iva Adu Makaha. That is, it is a bright, smokeless flame capable of illuminating everything, that is the sense organ, mind, and all three avasthas, Jagrat, Swapna, and Shushupti, which is none other than Ishanaha Bhuta Bhavyasya, that is Paramatma, which is a controller of past, present, and future. Yamaraja says it exists even after the body is dead. Again, the standard example which is given nowadays is the electricity continues to exist even after the bulb is fused. Saha eva adya, saha u swaha. The very consciousness is now and it will be in future also. By this, Nachiketa's question to whether he exists or not after death is answered, and also his third boon on consciousness, that is Atma Vidya, is answered. Etat Dvaitat. Now, the next 14th and 15th verse explains the benefits of non-duality. And this is the 14th verse, which emphasizes on Dvaita Darshanam. Dharman Prutak Pashyan means seeing even jivas to be, every jivas to be different from other jiva, and Tan Eva Anuvidhavati. He will be reborn again and again in the world of plurality. To convey this message, Yamaraja gives an example in this mantra that plurality is like raining on the slope of mountain. This water gets divided into several small streams, and then gradually the water gets absorbed in the mud and destroyed. Similarly, Dvaita Darshanam leads to mortality. The last verse in the next slide is the 15th mantra, which we'll see the meaning in the next slide. Jivatma Paramatma is compared to a glass of pure water. Shuddham Udakam Shuddhe Udake Asiktam. When pure water in one container, that is Jivatma, is poured in the pure water of another container, Paramatma, it becomes one indistinguishable water. Similarly, Atma becomes one for whom, that is Mune Vijanataha, for a wise person who has done Vedanta Vichara. So Jivatma should have undergone sadhanas like Karma Yoga, and Aikyam is an intelligent event, not a physical event. With this, Yamadharma Raja conveys Advaita Darshanam leads to immortality. Next slide. This is one of the quote by Swami Ramana Maharshi, which tells on Advaita Darshanam. Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sheila, for a nice recap of the last 5 mantras that we studied in the previous class. Each of these mantras are so precious and so important. I think we should focus on about 1 mantra per day of Kathopanishad. Sadashivasamarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. We begin in today's class, the second Valli of the second chapter of Kathopanishad, where you have some of the most important mantras ever of Kathopanishad. Each of these mantras are packed. Many of them you will hear this phrase, Yetad Vaitad. Nachiketa, this is what you asked for. In fact, when you say Yetad Vaitad, the teacher is also saying this is the ultimate as far as human understanding. So therefore, whenever you hear that word yetad vaitad, it means pay a lot of attention. There is something very important that is coming. Now, so many of us have invested so much time on Brahma Vidya. Today, we know more important than money is time. Why are we doing whatever we are doing? Now, let us see the importance of religion and spirituality when it comes to difficulty and suffering. Most of us pray, and most of our prayers is very routine, very systematic. We pray regularly. But when does our prayer become more intense? Naturally, you will see whenever there are difficulties, whenever we are going through some personal or a family difficulty, our prayer becomes very different. So religion and also spirituality becomes more relevant in the context of suffering. We have a nice example in the life of a very sensitive person, Gautama Buddha, who was insulated from all kinds of human suffering. One day he saw an old person and he asked his charioteer, will that happen to me? He says, yes. He saw a sick person. He says, can my body go sick? He says, yes. He saw a dead body. And he says, will I also die? And the charioteer straight said, yes. Then he saw a monk sitting under a tree and he says, what is this man doing? He said, this person is looking for answers to human suffering. Now, that was an important day in his life. Suddenly, life became very meaningless. If all these things are going to happen to me, I need to discover meaning and meaning for suffering. It took 7 years of intense austerities until we know Gautama Buddha became enlightened. And when he became enlightened, he made a certain formula. He says the Four Noble Truths. And the Four Noble Truths are that this world is full of suffering. He said there is a cause for this suffering. There is an end to this suffering. And he offered from the whole Buddhist or his understanding how and what we can do to overcome suffering. So all religions everywhere have their own package. The school that we go through is a little unique school. This school is called Advaita Vedanta. Now, those who have been in the school of Advaita Vedanta know for some time that these are the kind of problems we all face in our daily lives. I will become old. I will fall sick. I will die. Does Advaita have a problem? That means once I go through and I get the knowledge that of all the Upanishads, will it solve my problem of aging, sickness, death? Will it solve my financial problem? Will it solve my relationship problem? We know for certain, no. If it is no, then why are we wasting time? What are we doing? Sometimes we wonder if it is a form of a psychotherapy. The psychotherapy, when our teachers say, you are Brahman, you are limitless, this world is not so real. And sometimes when it is said repeatedly, even though we don't understand it, internally there is a kind of psychotherapy. I mean, internally it has worked on you. Yeah, I am Brahman. The world is not so real, and so on. Let me tell you a story, and I want you to interpret the story in a right context. There was a man who had a problem. The problem was whenever he would enter his chief executive's room to discuss something, and it happened that his work involved meeting the chief executive occasionally, he used to get so anxious and so disturbed that he would pass urine in his clothes. This was a problem. So he approached somebody. Now, today, everybody has answers, but even if they don't know. So he goes to somebody and tells him, see, this is my problem. What can I do? So the man said, you have to see a urologist. The urologist will have all problems for the urinary problems. So he trusted him and he went to the clinic where there was a hospital where the urological services were. But then he made a mistake. Instead of seeing the urologist next door, the doctor was a psychologist. So instead of seeing the urologist, he met the psychologist. Now here, everybody have treatment for everything. So the psychologist agreed to treat him. So he went through his psychotherapy for some time. And then after some time, the friend met him. How are you feeling? Are you better? He said, yes. Has your problem been solved? He says, no, but now I'm not bothered about it. Now, is Vedanta something like this? I continue to go through my problems, but now I'm not bothered about it. Why? I'm Brahman and the world is not so real. Is it something like that? Think. Are we psyching ourselves or are we doing something else? Now, Brahma Vidya, if you see, goes through first diagnosis and then before we offer therapy. In the fifth chapter, 15th verse, there is a great verse which says, we have studied all this. Ajnanena avritam jnanam tena muhyanti jantavaha. Now, here Sri Krishna gives us a diagnosis. Why are the whole of humanity suffering? Although we are already that. Whatever we are that, I'm coming to the same jargon. We are Parabrahma, Paramatma. We cannot be affected by anything, although we are already that. That jnanam, that enlightenment, that light within me has been covered. Avritam, ajnanena. The cloud of ignorance has blocked me. And because I do not know my true nature, I am suffering. Now, this is what Krishna says. Advaita Vedanta says, you do not know your true nature. You are already that. It is like a prince who's lost from his palace, going around like a beggar, and somebody discovers him and says, you're not a beggar, but you're the prince, the Yuvaraja of this kingdom. Imagine somebody has met you and told you that. Now, we are in that state. That means we do not know our true nature. I'm here to inherit my entire kingdom. My kingdom is waiting to be inherited, but then I do not know that. Now, to know, how do we know? We have to go through the treatment of knowledge. And in Vedanta, through a certain process, there is a process through Tattva Bodha, through various scriptures to give an understanding. Who am I? This is the most fundamental question, the Jiva. Then I see the world around me. What is this world around me? Jagat. Then if Jiva and Jagat are there, there must be a Lord, Ishvara. Yes, there is the Lord, Ishvara. Then I am suffering. Is there a way out? That is called moksha. So can you give me certain exercises or sadhana or spiritual exercises to move from bandha to moksha? Now, if you see all our scriptures have somewhere, especially when you see the Prakarana Granthas, like Tattva Bodha, Viveka Chudamani. So all of them, Panchadashi, will be structured on these lines. But when you study the Upanishads, we have to draw them from different aspects. Of course, that is the role of the teacher. The teacher will teach you the Upanishad, but the teacher will also tell you where you have to pick up about Jiva. Where is this Jagat? Where is this Ishvara? Where are those sadhanas? Which are those verses will tell you what, and so on. Initially, and only initially, there is a stage when we have to move out of what is this Jiva Jagat Ishvara triangle. If you don't move out of this triangle, we get stuck in this triangle. You will always be what Vedantic teachers say, parichinna. I am small. I am small. You are big. And this I am small, you are big, this prayer will go on. And then it is okay. But at some stage, we have to graduate beyond that. A nice picture of Jiva Jagat Ishvara, where you are like the batsman. The only support you may be is that fellow on the other side, your other batsman who's your family member. But the whole world seems to be there against you and waiting to get you out. And you struggle. And once in a while, you appeal to the empire who is. And when you see yourself in this triangle, Swamiji calls us as MBBS. Life can become meaningless, burdensome, boring, and a struggle. Now, the diagnosis is not that I do not know, but I have incomplete knowledge. I know I am. Nobody needs to tell you whether you are there or not. I know I am, but I do not know who I am. I do not know my true nature. My true nature is that, which, and according to Vedanta, is Parabrahma Paramatma, the highest that you can possibly be. I do not know that. My basic problem is avidya. Now, let us work from this avidya. I have incomplete knowledge. Whenever I do not know, whenever there is avidya, this is technical, but be with me. Avidya leads to adhyasa. When I do not know my true nature, I make an error. The first problem is ignorance. Ignorance leads to error. And that error is the instrument through which I function, this body mind, now becomes identified as me. So the mistake that I make because I do not know who I am, but the instrument that I use, which is so proximate, so close to me, I identify as I am. And teachers or Vedanta say, this is what is called the knot in your heart, the Hridaya Granthi. The Hridaya Granthi consists of four things. Avidya, I do not know my true nature. And then, because I have a mind and I am able to think, a thought comes. Now, if I become rich, if I become famous, if I become powerful, maybe, so that is karma. Once karma comes, can you keep quiet? You have to do something about it. You have to work. That is karma. Whenever you do karma, you either incur punya or papa, and punya or papa enforces you to come back to the cycle of punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. And this is the avidya kama karma, punarapi jananam cycle, or the hridaya granthi. Fortunately, a guru and an acharya has come and is helping us to get out of that sorry go round that we have been going through all in all. Once a teacher comes to you, the teacher will bring those texts, those shrutis to you. But before the teacher brings it to you, the teacher will sort of interact with you through a process of yukti. Yukti means logic. We are all logical people. If somebody tells you something illogical, you are Brahman, you are eternal, you are this, that, now it won't appeal to you. So I know who I am, at least what we feel about this. So it doesn't appeal to you. So the teacher initially goes through logic, initially goes through anubhava, your own experience. And over a period of time, when you see the teacher is in the same body like you, in the same world like you, but unaffected by anything that is happening, then you know, oh, there is some people who live in the same world, but who are look like superhumans. They are not affected adversely by this. And then if you trust them, then they will say, okay, are you ready? Do you have Shraddha? Shraddha is the key word. Once Shraddha is there, then the teacher introduces you to Shruti. Until then, until Shraddha is there, Shraddha is not there, you cannot go to the Shrutis. The Guru will check if you have the Shraddha. Shraddha means the best equivalent is gospel truth. Now, I take the Shruti, the scriptural words, as truth. Once you are there, then you have a 3-point program and the teacher works on you. And the teacher will try to tell you about your true nature. You are this body mind, but then just like this hand and light example, the teacher will introduce you to that conscious principle that you are and see how you can identify with that conscious principle. Now, Advaita Vedanta does not solve all these problems. Aging, sickness, death, the most important thing that all of us go through, no solution. For financial or relationship, no direct solution. But if Advaita Vedanta does not solve these problems, what does it do? It dissolves the one with the problem. Who is the one? Who are you? Suddenly I disappear. When I have gone away, so the whole work of Advaita Vedanta is to work on helping that limited I to be dissolved. And that is the whole process that slowly happens. I move from the limited to be able to discover the limitless. The moment we have a glimpse of that limitless, then you know The goal of Advaita Vedanta is, while in this life, to be able to discover I am Atma. Atmanevatmana tushtaha. I revel in the Atma. You have so many verses like this. Yastu Atma ratireva syad, Atma triptasya manava, Atman eva tu santushtaha. Santushtaha. And I can, revel, I can celebrate on my true nature. Tasya karyam na vidyate. What is there left to be done for such a person? Such a person is called krita kritasya. This is called the accomplishment of the accomplished. There is no greater accomplishment than the discovery of I am that. Once you discover that, the next feeling is Atmaupamena sarvatra samam pashyati yorjun. To be able to identify that conscious principle in you is the same in everything and everybody around. Sukham va yadi va dukkam sa yogi paramomata. In my opinion, Sri Krishna says, such a person who's able to see himself in all is a super deluxe yogi. So what are the benefits of Brahma Vidya? In this life itself, in this limited body, you become free. And then once the body drops, there is no more coming to this life. So all my problems is because of avidya, adhyasa, identifying with the instrument, my body-mind. Because as body-mind, there is no complete solution to any problem. All of us, many of us are in problem-solving domain. We know how to put a balm, but there is no complete solution to any problem. As Atma, there is no problem. So what do? Understand your true nature, play your role. And then what happens? What happens to your aging, sickness, death, financial relationship problems? Swamiji keeps telling us about what happens to the stars when the sun rises. Do the stars disappear from the skies? Of course, they do not go away. They are still very much there. But when the sun of consciousness has dawned, aging, sickness, death, relationship become there, but relatively insignificant. This is what is called. I'll conclude this thing by giving you the climax of what Vedanta takes you to. Swamiji has handheld us and brought us to this vision that I am of the nature of eternal and all-pervading consciousness. This is called Atma in Atma Viveka. And once you discover I'm not this body, I'm the Atma, which is Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta Shivoham Shivoham Shivaswarupa. This Atma Tattva is the only source. I don't depend on any person, any object, any situation for my peace, security, and happiness from now on. I alone am the only source. Now, these things are a little more difficult to understand, but in today's class itself, you will see, as Atma, I enliven this body through my mind, of course, the inert mind. In today's classes, you will see Dr. Sundar, Dr. Rekha, Dr. Ashwini will be talking about how the Atma Tattva will enliven the subtle body, and the subtle body works on the body, the gross body. So there is a mechanism through which how the Atma Tattva, I enliven this body, and through this instrument, I'm able to experience this whole world. And then afterwards, the sun and the stars. Now, when I discover my true nature, I'm only this instrument. Whatever happens to this instrument, like whatever happens to my computer, my car, or my mobile telephone, I'm not really adversely affected by anything that happens to this world or to my body, because I'm somebody else. I'm Asanga. I'm of a higher order compared to all of them. This Asangatvam is what gives us mukti. This tells you that you are Paramarthika, and Vyavahara is like a person who wakes up from a dream. Now, when you see a picture of Sri Dakshinamurti, remember this all the time. There is a tendency to forget all this, what we have studied in class. If I forget, I land in samsara. If I remember, it is Nandati, Nandati, Nandateva. We begin with a very important verse, which Sukanya will teach. For this matter, so many verses in Kathopanishad. In fact, you can take one of these verses and make your whole life around it. So, Kanya, please.
Hari Om, sir. Lord Yamadharma Raja explains in this Valli the Atma Swarupam as an answer to Nachiketa's third boon. Because the subject is very subtle and incomprehensible, it's explained repeatedly. And the Lord also repeatedly says, Etadvaitat, which means it's indeed that. In this verse, he explains the Jivatma Swarupa with an analogy of a city. Physical body is compared to a city wherein the Jivatma resides. Verses like this. Puram ekadasha dwaram ajasya vakrachetasaha anushtayana chochati vimuktascha vimuchyate etadvaitat. Next slide, sir. The city of 11 gates belongs to the birthless Atma, which is of the nature of undifferentiated consciousness. Meditating on this, one does not grieve. Having become liberated while living, he becomes liberated after death also. This is indeed that. Now, about the location of the 11 gates. 7 are in the head, 2 each in the eyes, in the ears, nostrils, and the mouth, and 3 in the lower part of the body, 2 for evacuation and 1 navel. And 1 is on top of the head, which is called Brahmarandra. This is considered the passage for Agnani to reach Brahmaloka upon death. This physical body belongs to Jivatma, who is Avakrachetasa and Ajaha, in the form of chainless consciousness, who does not have modifications and is birthless, unlike the body which has a birth date and an expiry date. The fundamental principle of Vedanta is the understanding, I am not the body-mind, I am beyond the 3 states of waking, dream, and sleep, and I am other than the Panchakoshas. I am Satchit Ananda. Physical body is compared to a city, Puram, and Jivatma is the Puraswami residing in the heart. Hridaya Guhayam Tishtati. The kingdom is protected by a wall compared to skin. Jivatma is the master. Functions of the physical body are carried out by various internal organs, blood vessels, arteries, veins, etc. Karmendriyas and Gnanendriyas are the gateways for action and knowledge. Panchakarmendriyas, Panchaprana, Antakarana, these are all citizens working for the master, doing their respective jobs. Some are essential services, some are non-essential, doing their job, even during sleep. Now, the body is working well. Things have not started disintegrating because the master is there. Once the master leaves, the body cannot function. In short, claim you are the Jivatma residing in the body, in the city of 11 gates. Next slide, sir. Swami Vidyaranya has explained this verse in Anubhuti Prakasha, verse number 78 as under. Puramekadasha dwaram nabhihi murdhanya samyutam dehakya yasyatam drishtva vimuktasan vimukchate. Realizing the ruler of the city of 11 gates, which is termed as the body, one who is already liberated gets liberated. In simple words, Swami Vidyaranyaji explains, the individual soul, Jivatma, being really of the nature of Brahman, is always liberated. Yet, because of its false identification with the body and mind, and owing to avidya, ignorance, it has lost sight of its identity with Brahman. When this avidya is removed by realization of Brahman as identical with the nature of individual soul, the latter attains liberation. Hence, it is said here, he who is already liberated seems to be liberated. Next slide, sir. Swami Paramarthananda Ji, in his commentary on Anubhuti Prakasha, also explains the body is compared to a city protected by a wall, that is the skin. The city has 11 gates for movement. Navadvare pure dehi naiva kurvan na karyan. In Bhagavad Gita, 9 gateways are mentioned. Nabhi and Brahmarandra are not included because they are rarely used. Next slide, sir. The main goal of a sadhaka is to attain the highest purushartha, moksha. For this, the sadhana, anushtanam, is he has to initially claim, I am the master of the body, not the body. I am dehi, not the deha. Then learn to differentiate atma and atma through drik drishya viveka. This is gained through shravana and manana. Next stage, he is trained intellectually to separate the body from its master through nididhyasanam. This is a shift from the triangular format to binary format. Intellectually, all three are dismantled, Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara. What remains is Atma and Anatma, the binary format. Next slide, sir. Jivan Mukti and Videha Mukti are the two benefits of this aparoksha gnana sadhana, which is explained in this verse. Gnani enjoys liberation while living here and now, and after death, due to absence of the medium of Sthula and Sukshma Sharira, Chit merges into Brahman. He enjoys freedom from the cycle of Punarjanma. Next slide. Vimuktascha vimukchate. What is this? Vedanta deals with three fundamental aspects of self-knowledge, Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara. Ignorance of this knowledge leads to misconception. Ignorance and misconception together creates miserable samsara. This is Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara triangular format. Through Guru Upadesha and Shastra Shravana, the limited Jivatma Bhava disappears and he claims I am the limitless Brahman. He claims I am the Jivatma identical with Paramatma, Sat Chit Ananda. I am the experiencer Atma. All objects of experience are Anatma. I am not affected by the objective world outside. This is a shift to binary format. He attains freedom from avidya, kama, karma. This is Jivan Mukti, liberation while living. After exhaustion of prarabdha karmas, when the body falls, the Sula Sharira will fall. Sukshma Sharira also cannot survive because there are no karmas and the causal body also cannot survive. So Chaitanya merges into Brahman, Chidabhasa merges into Virat Ishvara. This is Videha Mukti. In conclusion, Sadhaka claims, I am the Jivatma, resident in the city of 11 gates, identical with Paramatma. With this aparoksha gnanam, he is free from sorrow and is a Jivan Mukta, which lasts till his prarabdha karmas are exhausted. Once all the prarabdha karmas are gone, he attains freedom from all three types of bodies. Trivida Deha Mukti. He merges into Brahman. Going ahead in the next verse, Lord explains, this Jivatma who resides in the body is the same who pervades everywhere. Lord Yama concludes by saying, O Nachiketa, it is this Jivatma Swarupa which you wanted to know as your third boon. Etat Vaitat. Hari Om, sir.
Thank you very much, Sukanya. You have done full justice to a very important verse. This verse, I will focus on your slide. There are 4 important points that need to work on. I mean, everything that you said is important, but I'll focus on this. Are you the Pura or the body or the Pura Swami? That is Direct Drisya Viveka, Atma, Anatma Viveka. So once we know that I am a combination of two, the teacher will help you to move out of the body and claim that the higher aspect of you is the real you. And the moment it becomes a conviction in thought, word, and deed, in every aspect, not only in class, as you go out in the world, you see yourself as Brahman. That becomes a Jnana Nishta. In that moment, you experience what is this Jivan Mukti. And for such a person, there is certainly no Punarapi Jananam. That is what this great mantra number 1 of Pura Eka Dashadwaram. There is a nice word called Anushtaya. This is what needs to be meditated on. The whole question of who am I? Can I move from the Anatma to the Atma? And then in the next verses, you will, if you have moved, understood what is this Jiva, now you will know what is Jagat, which Dr. Sundar will tell us. Dr. Sundar, please.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. While the Prathama Adhyaya had some verses about the story part and the 3 boons, the entire second Adhyaya, as Pujya Swamiji says, is Yamadharma Raja's teaching regarding Atma Swarupam in a concentrated and focused manner. Since this topic is subtle, Yamadharma Raja is approaching this subtle topic from various angles. So we are in the Dvitiya Valli. So the discussion continues further on Atma Swarupam. Pujya Swamiji, from the first and the second mantras, he is able to conceptualize 4 stages that a spiritual seeker goes through as is described in these verses. So before we get into the first stage, before we are exposed to the Bhagavad Gita or the Vedanta, I don't see myself as anything beyond the body-mind complex. So as was seen in the first mantra, in the first stage, the Upanishad introduces us to something which was already there within us, but we have always taken it for granted. So the first stage said that all of us have something profound, precious within, which is called as Atma. So at the end of this stage, we can now say that I am body-mind complex, which with Atma. So this is my understanding. Then in the second stage, we are brought to understand that this consciousness is not a part, product, or property of the body. It is an independent entity which enlivens this body. So from this, I come to know that the body-mind complex is incidental, whereas the consciousness is something which is more fundamental. So in the second stage, I now say that I am actually Atma or consciousness within incidental body-mind complex. So this was the description of Jivatma as we came across in the first mantra, which was dealt with just now. So we have been introduced to a Atma, which is Deha Vyatirikta. So there is an entity which is called Atma, which is separate from this body-mind complex. And also in the second stage, we know that I am Puraswami and not the Puram. So the question that is asked is, how can I forget the king of the kingdom? Whenever the king is vanquished or king disappears, the kingdom disintegrates. So also, when this blessing principle, the consciousness goes away, the body disintegrates. Kshiyate iti shariram. So the derivative of the root word for the shariram itself is that which disintegrates, and it is held together only because of the presence of the consciousness, which is the blessing principle. So Sir emphasized on the word anusthaya. So Pujya Swamiji says the primary objective, primary exercise of each one of our life is to shift claim from the stage one, where I think I am body-mind complex who has an Atma, shift claim to this Atma, which is more fundamental and which is blessing, because of which the incidental body-mind complex is there. Anusthaya is to make a shift in this claim to that Atma. Now, in the third stage, we are moving from Deha Vyatirikta Atma to Atma Ekatvam. So the content of the second mantra is to say that not just this consciousness, which is blessing the body-mind complex of my body, the same consciousness is the one which is blessing all the body-mind complexes. So Atma is one, and this one Atma is blessing all the body-mind complexes. So I am non-dual, indivisible, all-pervasive consciousness behind all body-mind complexes. So this is brought about in the second mantra. And then finally comes the stage 4, where the Advaitam is resolved by discussing the relationship between consciousness and matter. Simply put, consciousness is Satyam and matter is Mithya. However, this becomes more profound when we know that consciousness is immanent in matter and it transcends matter. This brings us an understanding that consciousness is asangaha. It cannot be affected whatsoever manner by the body-mind complex or matter. And this is so because, truly speaking, the matter, anatma, body-mind complex is not countable It is mere Nama Rupa alone. It doesn't have its own existence. It is actually one consciousness which is in the guise of this pluralistic Anatma. So at the right end of the spectrum, you have this Ekam, Advaitam, Kaivalyam, one consciousness. And at the left end of the spectrum, before the first stage, we started off with the Jivatma. So in these four stages, Swamiji presents the Aikyam between the Jivatma and Paramatma, which is seen in these two mantras. We have now covered the first and second stages in the previous mantra. So this mantra is about the third and fourth stage, that is Atma Ekatvam, how one Atma itself is presenting as various things. So here the Upanishad presents various sacred things so that we get reverence to it. Hamsa Suchisad Vasurantariksha Sad Ota Vedisad Atitir Dronasad Nrasad Varasad Prasad Vyomasad Abja Goja Ritaja Adraja Ritam Brahat. So Hamsaha Suchisad. Suchi is Akashaha, and Hamsa normally means a swan. Swamiji points out that the root word is Han, or to destroy. And here it's a reference to Surya. And Surya is destroying darkness. And Hamsaha in the form of a Paramahamsa, as used for Ram Krishna Paramahamsa, is a reference to a jnani who has destroyed the inner darkness of ignorance. So Atma is in the sky as Surya Rupa. So the Surya that we see in the sky is nothing but Atma. Vasu Antariksha Sad. So Atma is in the space as the wind that carries the fragrance. So there is actually no wind, but it is Atma only in the guise of the wind. Hota Vedi Sat. So Vedi refers to earth, and Hota here refers to Agni. So the essence of earth is Agni. Atma is as Agni in this earth. So Atma alone is, there is no earth. What earth is mere name and form. Atma alone is in the form of earth. Atiti Durona Sat. Atma is in the house as the guest. Nrisat, the core essence of every human being is his sentiency, and that core essence is Atma. And Varasad, Vara refers to the Devas who are superior. Vara, Varishtha, that is the root word. So Atma resides in all the Devas in the form of Chaitanya. So this so far is a reorientation of our thought process to look at different things as nothing but Atma. Next slide, sir. Continuing with the second mantra, Rita Sad. So Atma is very much as the Vedic rituals. Vyoma Sad. So the all-pervading space is nothing but Atma in the form of very existence. Abjaha. All the aquatic beings are nothing but Atma. Gojaha. All the earthly things, earthly creatures are nothing but Atma. Adraja. Atma is itself in the form of all sacrificial accessories. Ritaja. Atma itself is what is in the form of mountains and rivers. Actually speaking, there is no mountain and river. It is Atma alone who is in the form of all of this. Ritam refers to Satyam, or the absolute reality, and Brihat is Paramatma. So Atma is Paramatma, is in the form of all these things. What appears is mere name and form. So thus far, the Atma is now described as Satyam. It is described as being immanent and transcendent. The only one thing that is, everything else is mere name and form. So that completes the presentation of the 4 stages of understanding of the seeker. In the next slide, we go to the third mantra, which explores the topic of Jivatma again. But here it looks at how the Jivatma becomes sentient. What is the works in the happening in the behind that makes the body-mind complex sentient. Urdhvam pranam unnayati apanam pratyag asyati madhye vamanam asinam vishve deva upasate. So we have understood from a Prakarana Grantha like Tattvabodha how the body-mind complex becomes sentient. I also put up 2 verses which are quoted from the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which describes how body-mind complex becomes sentient. But here we have a verse from the Vedas itself, from the Shruti, which shows how this mechanism happens. So we need to understand that, as we have seen, Atma alone is, therefore Atma is all-pervading. There is no place or no time when Atma does not exist. Now the mind has got a unique ability to reflect this consciousness. So we can see Atma as original consciousness or OC, and mind as reflecting medium or RM. And because of this unique ability, there is a reflection of the original consciousness which happens in the mind, which is called as reflected consciousness. The reflected consciousness is also called as Chidabhasa, whereas the original consciousness is called as Chit. Now, because of the RC, the RM or the mind, which is actually Jada or inert, it becomes sentient. So this is called as primary sentiency. Now, at the time of the birth, the mind along with the Sukshma Sharira enters the body or the Sthula Sharira. And the borrowed sentiency which it has, it then gives it to the body, which can be called as the secondary sentiency, and thereby it makes the body sentient. So to repeat myself, the mind has the unique ability to reflect consciousness. The original consciousness is all-pervading and everywhere. Because of its ability to reflect, there is a reflection in the mind which is called reflected consciousness. Mind becomes sentient, and it transfers this sentiency to the body, and therefore the body appears sentient. So this is the works behind the body, by which the matter body-mind complex, which is Jada, appears as Chetana. So life or birth is defined as a samyoga between the Sukshma and Sthula Sharira. The mind which is blessed enters the body and makes the body sentient. And death is the viyoga, that is the separation of a Sukshma Sharira from Sthula Sharira. So in this verse, Yamadharma Raja is offering a kind of a proof to say that it is finally the blessing of the Atma which makes the body sentient. Urdhvam pranam unnayati. So the subject, which is Atma, has to be supplied here. So the Atma, through the sentient mind, causes the exhalation of the air from the lungs. And apanam pratyag asyati. The same Atma, which has blessed the Sukshma Sharira, which has the prana within, also causes inhalation of the air into the lung. In other words, the Atma is responsible for breathing. In other words, the Atma is responsible for the very life itself. This all-pervading consciousness, where does it reside? The second line says, Madhye Vamanam Asinam. Vamanam is referred to in Atma, and Madhye refers to the center of the body, that is Hridayam. So Swamiji emphasizes not to say that Atma is located in the Hridayam. Atma is located everywhere, but it is recognizable in the Hridayam. So he gives the example that we put a tester in the plug to see if electricity is there. And he says that all of us are like plug points where God can be recognized, where Brahman or Atman can be recognized. The mere presence of sentient living beings all around me is evidence of all the plug points where Atman or Brahman is evident. And if he is worshipped in the Hridayam, then who is the worshipper and what is being given as Naivedyam? Vishve Deva Upasate. Deva here is the sense organs, as we have seen in many other verses also. Vishve refers to all the sense organs. So all the sense organs are like priests who upasate, who worship this Brahman, Atman consciousness which is there within me. The Naivedyam is various sense objects or the experiences that reach to this Atma. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sundar, for a very, comprehensive discussion of two very difficult verses. This verse, the second verse, is like Vishwarupa Ishvara, to be able to see the consciousness in me as the existence in the whole world. That is that verse. And then from this verse onwards, from verse 3 onwards, 3, 4, and 5. And we are so fortunate to have all doctors who are explaining what Yamadharmaraja says, how life happens in the body. When a person dies, what happened? Remember, Yetadu Vaitadu. He is answering Nachiketa's question. Remember those early days when we started Kathopanishad? Nachiketa approaches Yamadharmaraja and he asks the third boon. In the third boon, in fact, these aspects have been discussed in Brahma Sutras, whether Nachiketa got 3 boons or 4 boons. You will see Nachiketa asked the same question, the third boon, in 2 different ways. In the first way, he says, Yeyam prete vichikitsa manushya. There is a doubt. What happens when a person dies? Is something that continues to exist? Now, all that discussion is happening in today's class. In today's class, we will see what is that enlivening principle? What is this body? What is the subtle body? What is that which really travels? How Atma enlivens? And you will see all this discussion. And then that the same question asked, Anyatra Dharma, Anyatra Adharma, that you will find it answered in the first mantra, when you shift from Puram to Puraswami. The discussion will continue and Dr. Rekha will explain a related mantra. Dr. Rekha, please.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. This is an extension of what has been explained so wonderfully by Dr. Sundar. I will be brief and use Swami Paramarthananda's explanation of verse 2.2.4. Asya Visram Samanasya Shariras Tasya Dehinaha Dehat Vimuchya Manasya Kim Atra Parishishyate Etadvai Tat. So the meaning of this verse, Asya Vistram Samanasya, as this gets loosened or detached, Shariras Tasya Dehinaha, the embodied self, the indweller of the body, Dehat Vimuchya Manasya, gets freed from the body. Kim Atra Parishishyate, what then remains here? Etad Vaitat, this is verily that. So when this Atma, which resides in the body, gets detached, as it is freed from the body, what remains in this body? This is indeed that. In the next slide, the idea that Atma gives life to the body is further clarified in this mantra using the Anvaya Vyatireka logic, which conclusively establishes a cause and effect relationship. To establish a factor conclusively to be the cause of an effect, the presence of that cause must always produce the same effect, that is Anvaya, while the absence of that cause also must result in the absence of the effect, that is Vyatireka. Without this, one cannot conclusively establish the cause and effect relationship. Example, to establish that potato or peanut is the cause of an allergy, the consumption of the potato or peanut must always cause the allergic reaction, while abstaining from the potato or peanut should always result in the absence of the reaction. In Sanskrit, yat tatve yat tatvam, yat abhave tat abhavaha, tat tasya karanam. In the next slide, just to understand the Upanishad better, we learn that the word Atma is used relatively loosely in the Upanishad. It is used either for the original consciousness, as explained by Dr. Sundar, Chit, or the reflected consciousness, which is the Chidabhasa. Reflected consciousness is there only when the reflecting medium, that is a subtle body or Sukshma Sharira, is present, but the original consciousness is always there regardless of the presence or absence of the reflecting medium. So to avoid confusion, we use the term Jivatma to represent the reflected consciousness, and Paramatma is the original consciousness, which is a non-traveling Atma. When the reflected consciousness and the reflecting medium leave the gross body, death occurs. So original consciousness continues to be there, but it cannot directly bless the physical dead body. So the Upanishad establishes that when Atma is present, the body is alive. And when Atma is absent, the body is dead. And therefore, Atma is the cause of life in a body. So in the previous shloka, the Anvaya part of the logic was described. Now the Vyatireka part is explained in Mantra 2.2.4. When the Atma, now we know this Atma is the reflected consciousness that is referred to. So when that reflected consciousness departs from the body, along with the reflecting medium, which is the Sukshma Sharira, that is when it is freed from the body, what remains? So it's just a rotting lump of flesh and bones, as we all know, which when it is burnt is pulverized into ash. The original consciousness that blesses the body indirectly is what Nachiketa wanted to know more about in the third boon. So we come to the question, what happens at the time of death? So to use the familiar sun, mirror, and dark room example, where the mirror can lighten the dark room by reflecting the sun. But when the mirror, which is a reflecting medium, is removed, the reflection of the sun disappears. But the sun, of course, in the sky continues to be there. Similarly, when the Sukshma Sharira, which is a reflecting medium, quits the body, the gross body, Atma, in the form of reflected consciousness, that is, it is the Chidabhasa, is no longer available to the body. But Atma, the original consciousness, is very much there. So just to recap, because I find it is useful to do that, the Sukshma Sharira, the subtle body, the reflecting medium, it has 17 components. The 5 organs of perception, the eyes, ears, skin, tongue, and nose, the 5 organs of action, speech, hands, legs, the organs of excretion and procreation, 5 physiological functions or pranas, prana, apana, which was referred to in the previous verse, dhyana, udana, and samana, plus the mind and intellect. So just to recap once more, we have the causal body, which is represented by the Tanmatra, Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, the subtle body with the 17 components, and the gross body that remains after death, which is the Panchabhuta, the 5 elements made up of Akasha, air, fire, water, and earth. Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rekha. And to all our speakers who have been able to so clearly explain these very difficult mantras. And in these mantras, sometimes the confusing aspect is that one word, Atma, is used for both the reflected consciousness and the original consciousness. And Dr. Rekha has very nicely clarified this potential confusion. Now, all this knowledge becomes very clear if our fundamentals are clear. Remember, we are in the path of knowledge. Jnana Yoga means the path of knowledge. And for the path of knowledge, fundamentals are very important. Just like for a doctor, the basics of anatomy, physiology. Without that, if you are building a superstructure, it has become very difficult to understand. Now, even among medical doctors, when a person is being given a pass, when you are becoming let's say, a neurosurgeon, I remember how our examination happens. The people who are being given the degree or being graduated, now they classify them into two categories. See, there is, to be able to get Brahma Vidya, do you need all this detailed knowledge? May not be required. You may not need all these details of what is this gross body, subtle body, reflected media. All this may not be needed. Then for whom it is required? It is required for a teacher of Brahma Vidya. When you are going to be a teacher of Brahma Vidya and somebody has a doubt, what really happens, then the teacher has now understood, the teacher is able to clarify. But if the teacher is not able to clarify, the teacher also has a doubt, then the student will say, oh, what is this? Now, therefore, all these intricacies are so important. Sometimes you may wonder why it is worth breaking our head into all this. Not that I have to become a teacher of Brahma Vidya. Whenever you make an attempt to teach, your conviction of the path becomes more clear. And that is why the whole of the style of Param Vedanta, see, those of you who have prepared this for this mantra, your understanding of what happens when a body dies, how this enlivening process happens, this clarity happens when you are given this exercise. And all of us can do this exercise to be able to understand these scriptural verses and have a certain conviction, even though this may not be our conventional scientific knowledge. From a scientific knowledge also, if you look at Vedantic truth, we are convinced about one thing, what Vedanta is saying is true. Dr. Akshwini, on a related mantra, mantra 5, please.
Thank you, sir. Na pranena, na apanena, martyo jivati kaschan, itarenu tu jivanti yasmin neta upashrita. This is a continuation. What it means is, neither by prana nor by apana does any mortal live, but they live because of something else upon which these two depend. This is indeed that. In the next slide, let us see what is subtle body as a revision. Sukshma Shariram Kim? Swamiji answers, Swami Paramarthananda ji answers in the Tattvabodha text saying, Apanchikrita Panchamaha Bhutaihi, made up of finer matter that transcend like an invisible energy, made up of or generated by 5 elements, Akasha, Vayu, Agni, Jalam, Prithvi, and there are 19 parts of subtle body which happens to be a reflected medium. We've already seen, again to reinforce, 5 organs of knowledge, Jnanendriyas, 5 organs of action, Karmendriyas, 5 physiological functions, prana, inhalation, apana, exhalation, udana, distribution of breath, samana, associated with digestion, vyana, associated with excretion of mind, mana, intellect, buddhi, ahankara, ego, and chit, consciousness. Now that becomes 90. Now what is this? This is a toolkit for sukha dukkha, or doing good and bad karma. Among them, the most important one seems to be prana, because at the time of death, general saying is prana has departed. Next slide, sir. But if the subtle body is represented by prana, how do we understand whether reflected medium or reflected consciousness bless the body? When the body is alive, both are present, and some may argue that prana or reflected medium is the cause of sentience in the body. The body is alive when both reflected consciousness and reflected medium are present. Present is anvaya, and dies when both leave, vyatireka. In the text Panchadashi, Vidyaranya Swami explains this logic in chapter 1 between verses 37 and 42, where anvaya, as you can see, means to presence or invariable, which is anuvritti, that goes along or continues. Vyatireka is absence, which is variable. Vyavrittihi, which means to say it drops off or separates. Now, this is an intellectual method proposed by Sureshwaracharya, one of the disciples of Adi Shankara, which is based on association and exclusion. For example, when pot exists, so does clay. But when pot is broken, the clay still exists. Therefore, it can be concluded that clay is real, while pot is only mithya. Similarly, when the world and thoughts are present, we exist. And when these are absent, as in deep sleep, we still exist. Next slide, sir. Consequently, next slide, sir. Consequently, we must conclude that who we really are, the Atman, the real, while the world, including body and mind, etc., is mithya. Hence, prana by nature is inert, made of subtle elements, and therefore it cannot lend sentience to the physical body. Its function is to receive sentience from the original consciousness and transfer to the body through reflected consciousness. Next slide, sir. Finally, Swami Paramarthanandaji concludes saying that to illumine the dark room, the presence of both mirror and reflected sun is must. Only the mixture of two can illumine, and removal of any one will not. Though Anvaya Vyatireka logic seems to be correct, it cannot be applied because the mirror does not have light of its own. So the credit should go to the sun and not the mirror. So prana and apana both depend on Atma for sentience. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ashwini, for explaining this mantra without making it very complicated through certain examples. Remember, we are alive. What is that makes us alive? I am breathing. We think it is because the prana, the air going in and air going out. Although medical science is not able to verify this, that is enlivened, that is inert by itself, it is matter. Even the subtle body is matter itself, and subtle matter. And subtle matter by itself is jada or inert. So it is enlivened by a third entity. That is what we call as Atma. Atma does not directly enliven this body. Atma enlivens this body through the subtle body. This understanding, whenever we dabble around this, we become more comfortable exactly with what happens when a person dies. And we also understand death is really for the instrument that we use for interaction. And therefore, if I identify with the Atma Tattva, there is no question of death at all, because just like I have used so many mobile phones, and the change or loss of one mobile phone has no consequence at all to me. This is the side kind of asangatvam to this body mind, if you are able to have this in the course of this understanding. Perhaps that is the purpose. We will conclude today's class. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Thank you very much, sir. Another brilliant class bringing forth the powerful knowledge contained in the Kathopanishad. Surely we have to watch this class again and again. Thanks very much, sir, and all speakers, Sukanya ma'am, Dr. Sundar, Dr. Rekha, and Dr. Ashwini, for brilliantly explaining these verses to us. We learned so many things, or were they revealed to us? What is this body? What are the stages of spiritual evolution? What is this world and everything in it? What makes us sentient? What happens after death? And so much more. Our gratitude to Timappa Hegde sir for laying the foundation for us to understand all these aspects. Let the light of consciousness dawn in our hearts, shining bright and enliving all around us. We meet again on the 11th of March to parallelly continue our study of the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita through our gift series, session 17. Thank you all for being with us on this divine journey. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.